Hey everybody, it's Tommy Canale, and welcome to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Let's get this one going. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We are joined today by our Patreon members of the BTL crew from a recent Zoom call. Those on the call include my mother, Cheryl, Jeff Haraney, Missy Meidel, and special guest, Larry Henry. Larry was a previous guest and kind enough to meet a few of our members. Larry is a veteran print journalist and runs the Las Vegas Mafia History and Mob Summit Facebook pages. You can also check out his fantastic articles on casino.org. On this day, we are all spending time with family. Before the Lights is thankful for each and every one of you and all of our listeners worldwide. This was a fun call, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. To be part of the next one, join the BTL crew and visit patreon.com/beforethelights.
I'm going to start doing these probably every 4 to 5 weeks, and I'll bring on different guests for the Patreons. We're going to continue to up the content for you guys. I mean, I appreciate the support and what you guys are doing and being, the BTL crew that Dr. John Deloney nicknamed the Patreon group for me, the BTL crew. So I appreciate that.
Doug, just with the Streator connection there, that was pretty cool. I told a lot of people about that and shared it with my dad and everything. And I thought that was pretty neat.
Larry, for us all, I mean, outside of yourself, all four of us are actually from the same town in Streator, where Doug Dieken was born, and he's pretty much the biggest sport athlete to come out of that town, played 13 years in the NFL, and has been with the Browns organization for almost 50 years now as being a color commentator. When I did that interview, it exploded back into that area.
That's awesome.
And I live in Columbus, Ohio, so we get Cleveland television here. So I get to see Doug, with his morning shows and everything, or I'll hear him do commentary after a Browns game. So I think poor Doug's seen more Browns game than, like you said, than anybody else on the planet. So that's a special kind of torture right there, So
yeah, he did. He told me that he believes he's seen more Browns game than anybody other human alive, which is probably true, because he's been with the organization for almost 50 years. Do Missy or John or Jeff or Mom, you have any questions for Larry in regards to either what he does or questions about our interview or questions about the mob in general? I mean, this is the guy. If you have questions, he can give you the answers to them.
I have to ask Miss Canale first. Oops, sorry, Miss Canale. Are you volunteering at the Mob Museum now?
Well, I did volunteer as, I haven't started yet. I was just talking to a friend of mine today that also volunteers there, and she said, it's not quite as busy right now, of course, with COVID. Their hours are shorter than they were. I went and did the orientation. That was a fun day. Tommy, I had him go with me because the orientation is like 5 pages long of mob history that they want, So I'm hoping sooner than later because I was looking forward to that. It's a fun place. We'll
it's
see.
Slow. Tommy and I were talking the other day, Las Vegas, the Encore's closed midweek. Main Street Station still isn't open. It's, it's tough. That's why hopefully Circa will pump some life back into it.
I'm hoping. I just started reading a book. Tommy gets books and then he gives them to me. And he just gave me one. Is it called Double
Deal? You know the story of Michael Corbett?
Yes. And I'm only about 50 pages in, but it's like, and Jeff and Missy will relate to this. It's like, oh, that was old time Streator with the pinball machines and the
the derbies and the tickets
and the derbies and the tickets. They call them, but there was a jar they put them in. We just called them tickets and derbies. And if we mention that to anyone out here, they have no idea what we're talking about. They don't. Like they just, what do you mean?
The book's good. It's a story about a guy by the name of Michael Corbett who became the chief of police for Willow Springs. And at the same time was hooked up with Sam Giancana and the mob and was doing all kinds of stuff with crooked judges and paying people off. And then he leaves the department and becomes a full-time mobster. And I won't ruin the book for you, Mom, but that's a synopsis of it.
Well, getting back to the Mob Museum, as I know Larry knows this too, but when you go through there, they have there's a lot of memorabilia behind glass, and there's an area where they have the tickets, the punch boards, and they have the poll tickets. And so the first time we went there, which was years ago, we're like, oh, that's what we have at home. And there's people around us that, they're like, well, what are those and what do they do? And so it's kind of a fun experience. If you get out here and get to go, you too.
It's on my list, but I was going to come for your birthday.
Are all of you guys from the Chicago area?
We're all from the same town. We're all from Streator, Illinois. That's where we all grew up. Yeah.
El Capone is the big one down here. That's the one that we hear about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a book, Larry, I don't know if I've told you this or not, called Capone's Cornfields, that was written by a gentleman back in that area. It could be from Streator or somewhere around that area, that wrote about the whole Capone story in our surrounding towns of Streator and some of that.
Did you read that, Missy?
I haven't yet. I did buy it, though, at the new bookstore we have.
Oh, okay.
Are you in Streator now, Missy?
Yes, I still live here.
So, Larry, let's talk, and I'm sure this could enlighten probably everybody outside of you and I, but let's talk a little bit about the real life Geri Rosenthal. Everybody's seen Casino, I'd assume, and the character that Sharon Stone played. Actually, as Larry and I kind of hinted on the podcast, her and Lefty were FBI informants for a very long time. So how long, I don't know. Larry had told me that it could be from Lefty from his days back in the Chicago days. Larry, talk to us about Geri Rosenthal really outside of what we saw in the movie Casino.
It was a different sort of Las Vegas when she was in town. It was the 70s. She grew up in Van Nuys, California. That went to high school actually with a couple of sports stars that you guys are familiar with. Don Drysdale, a pitcher for the Dodgers. I think Drysdale's in the Hall of Fame, but made her way to Las Vegas. She was kind of the wild child of the family. It was a pretty stable family, and made her way to Las Vegas. And, back then, Las Vegas, we all know Las Vegas now as corporate control casinos, Versace, Guy Fieri. It's more of a, it's a different town now. And back then it was kind of a grind joint town. Speaking of Chicago, the Chicago mob was really big in Las Vegas. Johnny Roselli came down from Chicago to LA over to Las Vegas. Then Tony Spilatro came in representing Chicago. Then Lefty Rosenthal took over Argent Corp for casinos for the Chicago outfit. He wasn't in the outfit. He was Jewish, couldn't be a made man because he wasn't of Italian descent, Sicilian descent. But he ran the 4 casinos in Las Vegas that Argent owned: the Hacienda, where Mandalay Bay is; Stardust, where Resorts World is going up; Fremont, which is still there, by the way, in downtown Las Vegas; and Marina, which is now part of the MGM Grand. But, she was a chip hustler. She would go, to casinos and hustle gamblers at craps tables and 21 tables. She was a prostitute. She was a topless dancer at the Trop. Lefty lived at the Trop for a while. It was always a heavily controlled mob casino. It was, even back, it opened in 1957. It was sort of the jewel of the Strip. Back then, as you guys know, the southern end of the Strip where the Trop is out by the airport was way out back then. And, it was a hangout. Carlos Marcello from New Orleans, Frank Costello, Casey's going to come on in a minute, from New York. They all had a piece of the Trop. Johnny Roselli, handsome Johnny Roselli, the lady killer. He had a gift shop in the Trop and a piece of the Trop. So it was heavily mobbed up. Rosenthal lived at the Trop, met Geri, said, Nick Pileggi, who wrote the book Casino, quotes Rosenthal saying she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Back then, again, Las Vegas was different. These shows, you had these big, I know you guys know this, but, they had these big extravagant shows with the feathers and the show, the topless stuff and all that stuff. It was just a lot different back then. And she was one of those. And so they had a very tumultuous romance. He was abusive, violent. You know, he was a mob guy. He was a bookie. And she was, you know, they both heavily drank. They lived at the country club. And, you know, they were, again, back then in Las Vegas, I was a reporter back in those days in Las Vegas. Remember, you know, they were not seen as Sharon Stone and Robert De Niro. They were seen as kind of, you know, just criminals and kind of slime balls, really, you know, and they weren't these big stars that they're thought of now. And then so they, you know, they lived at the country club, and they went to the country club, and they dined and hung out with the elite of Las Vegas. All the, you know, the Perry Thomases and all the, you know, movers and shakers of Las Vegas in that day. They accepted people like Rosenthal into their circle. They wouldn't now, probably, because there's been so much attention paid to what was going on back then. But they sort of covered it up. You know, it was all part of those people had come out to Las Vegas and got legitimate, you know, became legitimate. I used to be press secretary for the governor of Nevada, a guy named Bob Miller, whose dad came from Chicago. He ran a burlesque house and gambling joint, a burlesque, and he came down to Las Vegas and got mixed up with that crowd. Carl Thomas, he ran the Riv, he ran Slots of Fun, and you know, the governor's dad was one of those guys. So it shows how Las Vegas was different in those days, and those kind of people were accepted. And so anyway, that was Geri Rosenthal, a little more than sort of paints the picture. And you guys know this because you're Las Vegans and you know, familiar with the town, but that's just the way Las Vegas was back then. It was more of a grind joint type of town. She was the queen of the chip hustlers.
Larry, do you think the mob took her out, or do you think that she OD'd just because of a drug problem, or do you think there was a combination of the two?
Probably a combination of the two. You know, Nick Pileggi told me that he thought he was so abusive. He was so abusive. Frank Lefty Rosenthal beat her constantly, violently. They were both heavy drinkers and drug users and angry drunks, you know, and so they would fight constantly. There's a famous a piece in Pileggi's book where on the driveway of their home at the country club, which the Mob Museum has had, people live there now, know its history. They had a big fight. She came out with a gun one time. I think they actually did portray this in the movie. She came out with a gun one time. Nancy Spilatro, Tony Spilatro, the aunt, was the mob overseer in Las Vegas for the Chicago mob. Nancy, his wife, who still lives in Las Vegas, by the way, apparently is going through a tough time. Nancy comes over. Jerry's in the parking lot. The driveway with a gun, had just been freshly beaten up. And so it was that sort of relationship. So she goes to a bank. It's still there on the strip near Circus. She goes to a bank, withdraws a bunch of jewels and things in a safety deposit box, millions of dollars worth, which back, you know, we're talking early 80s, late 70s, millions of dollars in jewels now is an enormous amount. But back then it was, you know, a fortune. So she takes that, goes to California, blows up at what was in Tony Roma's, between Tony Roma's and Marie Callender's on East Sahara. Now I think it's a Hustler novelty store, but yeah. So not long after that, a few months after, so Geri goes to LA. She gets mixed up. Pam Payton, by the way, who was a host on Frank Rosenthal's shows. He did shows from the Stardust. She goes to LA, just a real rough life. She was when she was killed or died. She goes to LA, gets mixed up with a bunch of bikers, you know, the sort of the California biker crew, and they abused her also, and realized she was wealthy. They knew who Lefty was. Everybody knew who Lefty was. Everybody was afraid of Lefty, by the way. He had an enormously volatile temper, which he took out on her, but on a lot of other people too. So the bikers didn't really want anything to do with Lefty, but they wanted his money. And so she got hooked up with these bikers and got heavily into drugs. Wanders down Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset, actually, one night and stumbles in 4 a.m, stumbles into the lobby of, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the place, Sunset Manor or something. It's still there. It's a kind of a little Fleabag motel, which is nothing on Sunset is Fleabag, but it was Fleabag motel. I think they gussied it up. But so she stumbles into the lobby of this Sunset Boulevard Hotel where junkies and, ne'er-do-wells were sort of hanging out and collapses in the lobby at 4 a.m, bruised head to toe, apparently from just batterings, people beating her up all the time, and needle bruises because she was a, needle user. Just a super, super tough life, Tommy. And, you and I have talked about this, and I'll shut up. To me, when you look at the whole Las Vegas in the 70s, Tony Spilatro, Lefty Rosenthal, to me, the most fascinating character of that whole group is Geri Rosenthal. I mean, she really symbolizes the tough life that no one would assert that, clearly we have a long way to go in terms of, equality, but in those, we're not treated as queens by any stretch of the imagination.
That's why I brought it up, because the movie glamorized the whole thing of De Niro and Sharon Stone, and there's the real story behind the movie, and let you shed some light, a little insight to these people here of what Geri Rosenthal really was and the kind of life she had. It wasn't the casino made it seem like she had a tough life, but not to that extent.
Like that, no. I didn't realize that he was that abusive with her either.
Yeah, he was a batterer. I mean, he was just a vicious. Back then in Las Vegas, what that mobbed up crew got away, they were so violent. And, cars were blowing up. Las Vegas, there's this myth that Las Vegas, there weren't many killings in Las Vegas because the mob agreed from different cities we wouldn't have killings. New York, Chicago, New Orleans, all these people had a piece of Las Vegas. That's really not true. There were killings. Tony Spilatro was deadly violent. Frank Collada, he was a lieutenant for Spilatro. They were killers. They blew up cars. Las Vegas was, again, it was, there's this whole argument. What was better, old Las Vegas or new Las Vegas? I like both. Newer Las Vegas is more up with the rest of the world. Back then, Las Vegas was rough town. And, Geri was, candidly a junkie and a prostitute. And it married a guy who was violently abusive. And, the outcome in something like that is never going to be positive.
No. Jeff, how many times have you been out here to Vegas?
It's been a while, but I used to get out there more when I was younger, but I've probably been out there maybe 6 or 7 times, I think,
So do you like old Vegas or new Vegas?
Well, I don't know New Vegas. I mean, there was no football or hockey teams or anything like that. There was.
So how long has it been since you've been here?
Okay, let's see. The Excalibur was probably 5 years old or something. So it's been
a
tens
while.
Of years. Yeah.
Okay,
so.
but that's still considered new Vegas. Were you out here with the stands and the dunes and all that was still here?
Yeah.
Okay, so which one do you like better?
I like old Vegas just because if I'm only coming out there once every year or two or whatever, then that's what I liked, rather than, but that's just for the myth of it and the lore more so than, if I had to live there, I think I would like New Vegas.
What about you, Missy?
Nobody ever asked me how much I travel. I've been there once, and Vegas scares me. Let's just.
New or old, Missy doesn't like it.
If you look up the Midwest, there is my picture. I'm just telling you.
Why does Vegas scare you? I've never heard of Vegas scaring anyone.
Well, first of all, when all of you say we'll be there in just a minute, it's not a minute. It's like an hour away. If I say I'm going to be there in a minute, it's going to be a minute. And
So what scares you about it? Is it too busy? Too big?
Yes. And I was on Fremont Street. I don't understand.
Well, Fremont Street is a 24/7 carnival circus. It just is. And it used to be, and Larry, we talked about this recently, came up with the right word for it. Before they cleaned it all up, it was really seedy. I mean, you could say it was scummy, it was dirty, but that's a great word, Larry. It was really seedy. I mean, when I was there in high school, we used to drive down Fremont. It was dirty, but it wasn't seedy. And it got that way as it got into the 90s before they decided to clean that whole area up. If somebody like you, Missy, or Jeff coming from the Midwest, Fremont Street's got to seem like, you know, this is Bourbon Street on crack cocaine.
Sure. When you're on the strip and you're getting all the prostitute cards and stuff, what are you supposed to say? Like, thank you?
Well, those are gone. They outlawed all those card slappers.
I really don't know what to do with that.
So those are gone. Now they put them in the newspaper machines are all over. You can lift up and take a card or a paper if you want it, but the handouts are gone because the cards were all over the ground. So they got rid of that. Mom, you like old Vegas or new Vegas?
You know, there's things about both. I mean, I don't know if Larry knows, we moved out here in 84. So it was such a small town then, considerably. And yeah, it was totally different. I miss some of the smaller casinos. I used to love the Sands. That was one of my favorites. I just, when Caesars was first, we came out here, the first time I was ever here was in 1977. And Caesars was just the original building that you drove up. I know, Larry, you drove up in front of it and that was it. It wasn't this I guess I would call it a monstrosity now. It's just, if you haven't been out here, you two, it's like a city in itself. But there are a lot of, the things I enjoy now about Las Vegas are, as Tommy knows, I run around with a group of ladies that we like, well, right now we can't because of COVID, but there are so many social opportunities here for, you know, music and concerts and theater and the hockey and all of those things that we didn't have before. So it's a combination of both.
Which do you prefer?
What about you, Tommy?
Well, Larry asked, well, what do I prefer? I mean, yeah. I like them both. I like the look and the feel of old Vegas. Mm-hmm. I like the way the strip was. It seemed like it was more intimate, where now it's more commercialized. I like that part of it. I understand the resorts and they have something to offer for everyone. And I get that because it attracts more people. We can bring in more people to the city because of the amount of rooms. If there was a way to combine the two, that's what I would prefer. The more intimate feel with the bigger amount of rooms. I mean, every resort now is basically a city in itself. Resorts World is freaking humongous.
Yeah.
You know, they just keep finding more areas to put up mega resorts. I honestly don't think the mob's completely gone out of Vegas. It's here to some extent, but nowhere near what it was. I mean, the skimming's gone and, you know, the so-called glamorization of it is all gone. And now it's being controlled, I think, in a different level, but I still think there's some aspect of it here. Larry, what about you? What do you prefer?
You know, I agree with your mom. I mean, you know, the Sands and the dunes and, you know, you knew everybody, you know, when your mom was mentioning the mid 80s, I remember around that time when Nevada, the whole state of Nevada hit 1 million people. It was a big deal. And I remember when the Mirage went up in 89 and that was, you know, but it would be just really hard. In fact, I went to a going before they imploded it in 96. And it was, you know, it was sort of run down like the Riv was toward the end and, you know, tears in the carpet and smelled like cigarette smoke. And so it would just, I think it would be hard for old Vegas to have made it with economically. You just can't have a Riv or a Sands or a Dunes or something like that when you've got the Cosmo and I mean, it's great that the Trop's still holding on, and it's you know, it's good for nostalgia. But I like that Las Vegas has. I'm with your mom. I like that it has so much more to offer now.
And interestingly enough, one of the older ones that's still here and thriving is Flamingo. And I have several groups of friends that when they come out, they want to stay there. They, instead of like one of the bigger, you know, the newer, bigger casinos with everything, they just like that old feel of Las Vegas.
Cost.
It still has, and yes.
It's one of the lower cost hotels outside of Luxor and Excalibur. Larry writes for casino.org. If you guys are looking for articles, he writes for casino.org all the time, and his stuff is really good. And he also puts out an article once a month on the Mob Museum webpage. If you're in the Las Vegas Mafia History Facebook page, if not, you can just ask to join, and Larry will put you on there. He'll put links to his articles on the Mob Museum.
Well, you know, the Cromwell and the Circa both are adults only now. It'll be interesting to see if that makes it.
Yes.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, Vegas at one time was all kids. I mean, every casino was bring your kids, and there was mom and dad in a stroller and 3 little ones walking through casinos, and they had
amusement rides. They had amusement rides in the back, and it was like, if you go down there and you see these families with, you know, babies and strollers, it's like it's not the atmosphere for that. I think it'll be all right. There are certain people that want to go away, gamble, and do those things here, and they don't. For the time they're here, they don't want to be around little ones.
I think the 21 and over will go if it doesn't catch fire and everybody does it.
Yeah.
If there's a handful of properties, I think there'll be some attractions that obviously everybody's going to want to go to Circuit because it's the new thing.
Yeah.
They're going to want to see everybody's talking about the Garage Mahal and the sports book. Missy and Jeff, if you've heard about this, but the sports book is 3 stories high. It's massive. It's supposed to be the biggest sports book in the world. Outdoor pool. If you guys pull up Circa Las Vegas, you'll see a picture of this pool. They put the biggest outdoors TV screen out there. It's 40 feet wide by 20 feet high with, I think, 6 or 8 pools that are all climate controlled and cabanas and palm trees and the whole 9 yards. I mean,
see, Missy, that's where you want to be.
It's
I'm already anxious that you're going to want to take me there.
It's and he's the guy that owns it. Derek Stevens also owns the Golden Gate and runs the D. And the D has a thing called the Long Bar, which is supposed to be the longest bar in the city. And now this one, he put one called the Mega Bar, which is even longer than that, by I guess 25 feet. I mean, that's the big thing now. Try to get attractions for people to come in because everybody's, especially with COVID, everybody's fighting for somebody to walk in the door.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I haven't heard if there's stipulations how many people can be in the circuit at one time, and if so, what that number is. And I'm sure everybody's going to want to go to the top 3 attractions. So everybody's going to flock to go, I want to see the sports book. I want to go see the pool. And it could be a line waiting to get
There might be.
to see some of those places.
Yeah, here's what I worry about. You know, Resorts World's coming online with 3,500 rooms. Now, Circa has 777 rooms. Cromwell's got 188. So they're small enough probably for the adult-only concept. But, you know, if it's going to be hard enough how are you going to fill up these mega resorts with 5,000-6,000 rooms anyway with COVID? Airport traffic's down. Man, I mean, I worry about Vegas making it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you know, we do too, as you know, those of us that live here, we do, because like you said earlier, the Encore, I'm sure some are going to follow if things don't change. They're not open during the week. And, you know, and as I'm sure you've heard, there's been some violence down there. Like you said, Larry, I hope that they can all survive, but, you know, time's going to tell.
And it's so dependent on air traffic. You know, LA's 5 hours away, but you take LA, everybody flies into Vegas.
Yes.
Jeff, what's going on in your life, in your world?
No, actually, just keeping busy. Well, the boys are part-time in school. I have 6 boys, so I guess that's yeah.
6 boys.
What ages?
My son's has his 30th birthday. He just left, so he came over, and then down to Fisher is 13. So
wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
But they keep us
with
busy.
All these
2 grandkids, you know, so.
You and Miss Canali both look way too young to be having 30-year-old sons and Tommy, you whatever you guys are drinking, the fountain of youth.
It's that Streator.
Is it the Streator water? Send me some of that water. You guys are the youngest looking parents I've ever seen in my life.
Well, Larry, I know you're busy and got to get writing for Casino Org. I just want to say thanks for taking some time out of, pumping out good material and joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. That's pretty cool.
Yes,
So-
thank
Seeing
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Yes.
Likewise, send me some of that fountain of youth water from
Come and visit us.
Streator.
I'll drive you around town.
Downtown. That's right.
Yeah, come
that's
visit.
Right.
right.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, guys. Great seeing everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
You know, it was kind of weird, Tom, when I saw your podcast there, because I listened to some. I'm not a lot, you know, but I was like, and I don't tune in to all of them. But I'll like look and see. You know, I'll listen. I'll throw them in if I'm in the car. I'm not in the car as much. That's when I used to listen to more when I was out traveling more. But now I've kind of retrained myself that as I'm sitting here, if I'm doing something a little mindless, I'll pop something on. And I thought it was pretty cool. So that was I appreciated it. So
thanks. I'm glad you like it. It's fun. I enjoy doing it and connecting with, researching about people's lives, and then when I get them on the show, watching their reaction on Zoom when I bring something up that they didn't either know I knew or they weren't prepared to talk about.
You've done it. You must be doing it a while. You've done a good job. I know you do a lot of research on your interviews. I can hear that. So that's
thanks. I started in March, actually.
Really?
And then I run a junior golf tour. We run golf events all over Vegas in the area. That one going now. I have a second one going called the Golf Zone with a business partner of mine that we do every other Tuesday. That one's going well too.
That sounds neat.
So when you interview people, do you see them? I
have them on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, 90% of them are on Zoom. A few of them are on a phone. Majority of them I have on Zoom. So,
I liked when you set out the how you had like your studio, your set, your office or whatever. That was kind of cool. So, you know, and I was like, kind of looking at some of the equipment there. I'm like, you know what? I should get something like that, you know? So,
when I did it, I wanted to make sure that the sound was good because a lot of the podcasts don't sound good. So I got some of the higher quality microphones. The mixing board that I use is a lifesaver. Yeah, but we're going to start posting some more of that stuff. You know, give all the Patreon members some behind the scenes and that kind of stuff. It's fun. Fun.
I liked hearing the stuff, you know, with the Illinois guys, you know, because, you know, when I went to, that's where I graduated from. I went to school in Champaign. And so hearing the Dion stuff, he came right after me, you know, after I graduated, but he's, you know, it was, I liked hearing that. And he told some good stories too. I mean, it was fun.
I feel like I'm interviewing a celebrity because I have all these stupid questions because I live in Streator. So do people often have more than one podcast?
Yeah, some people do.
Because I act really smart now because it's hard to believe, Cheryl, that I don't know anything about golf. And I listen to the podcast and then John comes home and I'm like, did you know that there's rules in golf? Yeah. I go like, how do you know? When you start playing golf, do they give you like a book? Like, how do you know? He's like, you just know. Because I told him to go look it up. And I go, did you know that you can hit the ball in the water? I go, but there's rules to that. I learn things.
It's fun. You know, we just had Reese Jones on, who's known as the Open Doctor. He redesigns all the U.S. Open courses and does the Ryder Cup courses. He's a friend of Eric, so we've had him on. But I mean, they're fun to do. Yeah. The golf zone's more laid back for me.
You know, and actually, like Missy, what you said, I found, because I didn't even know what podcast was. And I remember he said something about a podcast. I go, what is that? He's like, well, you know, he's trying to explain it to me. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? I get on my phone.
How many do you listen to, Mom?
I probably have 6, but I'm like, Jeff, I don't listen to all of them like every day, but there's a spiritual one that I really enjoy. And I listen to that one. And then, you know, of course, yours. And then I do that Dr. John. I'm hooked on him now. So I really like that one. And I kind of go, I play around with it. I'll try one for a while. If it doesn't interest me, then I go to something else.
What about you, Tom? How many you listen to? Yeah. What for you got a
probably
competition. So, you know.
Probably 15, 20.
Oh.
Yeah.
That I listen
to. For your own benefit or just to check it
out? There's probably 3 or 4 that I listen to for my own benefit, and the rest from just I'm a fan of. You know, the thing that's crazy about this whole thing is I haven't looked in a while, but last time I looked, the Before the Lights podcast is heard in 36 countries and over 600 cities. It's crazy how it just keeps growing. I mean, I'm glad it does.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. So I wish you the best success there for sure.
Yeah, thanks. Like I said, we'll do this again and invite everybody back on, and I'll get another former guest to come on as well.
Yeah, I like that.
Meet those people as well. So
for doing this, and thanks for the invite. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Everybody be safe.
I want to thank all of our Patreon members, even those that did not make the call this time. Hopefully everyone can be on the call in November or early December. Thanks to those on the call, my mother Cheryl, Jeff Haraney, that is in Ohio, and Missy Meidel from Illinois. Also special shout out to Larry Henry for joining the show and once again giving us insight to stories on the mob. For show notes, you can go to our website, beforethelightspod.com. Please follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. To join Patreon, go to patreon.com/beforethelights. There are 3 levels you can join, no more than $10 at the very highest level. So please take a look at that. Patreon.com/beforethelights. Become a member of the BTL crew, and you can get your invite to the show next time. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm Tommy Canale. A salute. A chin chin.